I believe my mother handled everything perfectly. I find it truly remarkable. 27 years following the heartbreaking loss of Princess Diana, Buckingham Palace reveals a hidden secret that might destabilize the entire royal family. While carrying out subtle repairs at Kensington Palace, workers discover a locked chamber that has remained undisturbed since Diana's last moments. Within it rests a beautifully decorated jewelry case bearing an eerie note intended for anyone brave enough to pursue the facts. DS. When Princess Anne receives the assignment to inventory what is inside, a routine royal responsibility quickly evolves into a disturbing discovery involving deceit, concealment, and real peril. Concealed correspondence, offshore accounts, and Diana's personal admissions all suggest a major plot that she intended to bring into the open. Yet certain individuals ensured she never had the opportunity. As Anne investigates further, a single question grows increasingly insistent: who actually prevented the people's princess from speaking out? Hit subscribe, give a like, and pass this along while we track Anne's transformation from devoted member of the royal family to someone determined to achieve justice. The facts Diana gave her life to safeguard could at last see the daylight. An unforeseen legacy. During the spring months of 2024, teams of builders arrived at the less frequented parts of Kensington Palace. An upgrade, focused on reinforcing structures in one of the building's most historic areas, soon became far more significant. Covered in thick dust and concealed by a boarded-up section of wood, the crew located a small room that no one had entered since the days just before Princess Diana passed away. It served as a preserved space full of personal history, exactly as she had left it. Once Buckingham Palace learned of the find, officials called upon Princess Anne, being the highest-ranking active royal who continued to embrace heavy responsibilities and who had always been trusted for her ability to keep matters private. She was the obvious person to manage the careful recording of everything inside. Even though Anne had spent years avoiding the public theatrics often associated with royal life, the importance of this discovery could not be overlooked. As she entered the space, Anne immediately noticed how perfectly still everything felt. Fine particles of dust covered sophisticated formal dresses, containers filled with personal notes written by hand, and pictures in frames showing a woman whose existence had inspired both deep admiration and constant harsh judgment. Anne's thoughts about her brother's late wife were far from simple. Early on, she had viewed Diana as overly sensitive, too quick to show feelings, and excessively eager for public notice. Yet as the years passed, in private settings away from any photographers, and gradually recognized Diana's intense commitment to her two boys and the issues she supported. There were occasional quiet instances when Anne genuinely admired her. Countless objects filled the area, yet only one truly drew her attention. Positioned toward the rear of a shelf and partly hidden under a soft silk cloth lay a finely crafted jewelry container. Nothing else in the room compared to it. Made from rich dark rosewood with careful inlays of small pearls and deep blue sapphires, it still gleamed despite the coating of dust. The skill involved in creating it was outstanding, and it gave off a sense that was distinctly personal and reserved. Anne lifted it while wearing a puzzled expression. It felt unusually heavy, as if it held far more than simple ornaments. She rotated it carefully while wearing protective gloves, examining every detail. That was when she noticed the words carved faintly into the underside of the top, placed there clearly not for general viewing, for those who dare seek truth. DS. The letters caused a shiver to run through her. Diana Spencer, using her birth name rather than her title as Princess of Wales. It felt deeply individual and almost rebellious. And surveyed the room once more, this time seeing it differently. Had Diana intentionally left something beyond clothing and small keepsakes? What exact facts was she hinting at? Why choose to conceal such a mysterious note within an object of such beauty? Holding the container firmly, Anne realized this was not a typical bequest. It represented a challenge, a communication, and quite possibly an alert. Anything contained within had been placed there for a person willing to look past surface appearances. Perhaps someone who, only now, regretted not having asked Diana more direct questions when the chance still existed. A concealed section. Princess, and found herself by herself in her personal rooms, with the jewelry container placed on a soft velvet surface in front of her. She had cleaned its exterior thoroughly, yet her focus kept returning to those carved words over and over. For those who dare seek truth. DS. The phrase would not fade from her mind, and had never been drawn to exaggerated reactions. All the same, the note stirred both her strong sense of responsibility and another feeling she was not prepared to identify yet. She lifted the top using calm movements. What she saw inside took her breath away. Resting there were earrings featuring uncommon Burmese rubies, a bracelet of sapphires that sparkled like distant stars, and a necklace combining emerald and diamond cut with such precision that it appeared to radiate its own light. While handling each jewelry piece, and observed something unusual. On the reverse side of every item appeared small engravings, symbols, specific dates, and sets of initials that did not correspond to any official royal record she knew about. She brought out a magnifying lens and examined them in detail. Certain markings seemed to indicate geographic locations. Others appeared to be codes or references, possibly file identifiers or calendar notes. One particular pin displayed digits resembling a code used by an overseas banking institution. Her forehead creased in concentration. These objects were not merely cherished mementos. They serve as clues leading somewhere. She shifted her focus back to the container itself. Her fingertips explored its carved lines and surfaces, following the patterns created by the artisan. Then, almost accidentally, or maybe guided by something greater, her thumb applied pressure to a slightly raised area close to the bottom. A faint sound clicked, and the lower section moved just a fraction, and stopped breathing for a second before carefully sliding the section aside. Revealed was another space, not deep but filled tightly. It held a group of letters written by hand, somewhat faded though still readable, bound together using a light blue ribbon that carried a subtle scent of lavender. Below those letters rested several glossy pictures, showing Diana obviously trying to avoid recognition while meeting people and could not identify. The settings were also unknown to her. Small restaurants, dimly lit parking structures beneath buildings, ordinary residences. None of the scenes matched the widely known public activities of the Princess of Wales. Hidden under the pictures was a compact silver key with an attached label reading Zurich Deposit Box 837L, and looked at it in complete shock. Her pulse quickened while she returned to the letters. On the top envelope, written in Diana's distinctive flowing style, were the words to Anne. "Please read if I am gone." The date noted in the corner sent a chill through her, only 3 days prior to Diana's fatal accident in Paris, and lowered herself into a seat gradually, her hands shaking just a bit. She opened the initial letter. Some of the ink had blurred, suggesting it was composed quickly. Her eyes settled on the very first sentence and stopped moving. "And if you're reading this, then they succeeded in silencing me." For an instant the room seemed to tilt. This went beyond nostalgia or family sentiment. It was not theatrical in any way. It amounted to an alert delivered from someone no longer alive. And shut her eyes briefly and drew in air. Whatever facts Diana had discovered now rested with her, and considerable effort had clearly been made to keep them hidden forever. Diana's last admission. The paper shook lightly in Princess Anne's hands, yet she kept her eyes fixed and calm. Diana's penmanship covered the sheet, graceful but filled with urgency, the letters leaning ahead as though she had little time remaining. And continued reading, feeling her breathing become uneven as the mood changed from warm to serious. Diana started by describing a fundraising event for charity held in 1995, the evening when she first grew suspicious that matters were not right. An organization supporting children that she had worked hard to promote had not sent promised money to projects abroad. When she discreetly sought explanations, people avoided answering, provided incorrect financial details, and later issued warnings to stop asking. The more she looked into it, the worse the situation appeared, and flipped to the next sheet and saw numbers written out carefully by Diana, including bank movements and accounts without names attached. From what Diana recorded, donations intended for people injured by landmines, pediatric medical centers, and refuges for women had instead gone into private holdings. Certain accounts were linked to influential business leaders. Others, even more troubling, connected to individuals associated with the royal household itself. Diana's words on the page became firmer and more determined. She described secret late-hour gatherings with reporters conducting investigations, one based in France and another in Switzerland, both already detecting evidence of a much broader scheme. She referred to coded terms, locations for leaving materials safely, and constant monitoring. She had started making audio recordings of discussions and keeping them in places she never revealed. People willing to expose wrongdoing had approached her privately, providing paperwork and prepared statements while frightened for their safety, and leaned back in her seat, her pulse racing. She had never pictured Diana organizing an effort of this scale. For a long time, she had considered her prone to acting on feelings without planning, kind-hearted without question, but sometimes careless. Yet this showed careful planning. This revealed a person fully aware of dangers around her, recording everything because she expected attempts on her life might follow. In sections of the letter, Diana's tone grew gentler whenever she mentioned William and Harry. "I am not afraid to die," she had put down on paper. "But I am afraid for them of what they will be forced to inherit if this truth is buried with me," and felt unexpected moisture in her eyes and blinked it away. She had completely misunderstood Diana. Those last months had involved far more than public scandals or personal sadness. They had centered on an urgent effort to shield her children from hidden influences working against the monarchy from inside. When she arrived at the closing sheet, Anne's hand stopped over one sentence underlined near the end. "If you find this, and then know I left behind a final insurance policy. Everything hidden in a Swiss bank vault." She glanced again at the small key taken from the secret space, now carrying much greater significance. The information Diana had tried so hard to share had not vanished. It remained stored safely under alpine peaks, guarded by privacy and discretion. And quite likely another person was also trying to locate it. The link to Switzerland. A privately arranged aircraft landed in Zurich while morning mist still covered the ground. Princess, and had made the trip without any announcement, without staff assistance, and without offering reasons. Only the security personnel closest to her knew where she actually was, and even they received false travel details. The key left by Diana stayed safely inside an interior coat pocket, positioned close to her chest like a constant reminder of responsibility. The banking institution in Switzerland operated with complete discretion, having served for hundreds of years clients who prized confidentiality most of all, and handed over the key along with the tag marked 837L. She spoke calmly, even though her heartbeat sounded loudly in her ears. The employee checked her documents, gave a slight nod without showing any sign of knowing who she was, and guided her through multiple layers of protected areas, each colder and quieter than the previous one. In a protected room set aside for viewing, the deposit box was set in front of her, and paused briefly before lifting the lid. Piles of paperwork greeted her. Detailed records of finances, payment confirmations, and transfers carefully organized. Folders in various colors, and additional photographs were present, every one marked clearly in Diana's familiar script. Yet the most unsettling items were audio tapes and compact discs arranged neatly toward the bottom, each labeled with a date and topic. One carried only the words "if I disappear," and placed the initial disc into the equipment supplied there. The display lit up, and Diana appeared, sitting inside what looked like a rented apartment, without makeup, looking weary yet determined. She started speaking in a steady tone. "If you are watching this, then I have been silenced. But I want you to know what I found and why I could not walk away," and moved closer while Diana listed specific individuals. These were not merely unknown company leaders or outside investors, but titled people who appeared pleasant in media images and organized fundraising events. Diana explained how they exploited charitable groups to hide money movements, redirecting large sums toward weapons transactions, hidden overseas holdings, and secret activities. She had attempted to inform authorities. A few paid attention while others told her to stop. She described growing worries that someone had damaged her vehicle's braking system, that she could no longer rely on her protection team, that she used rear doors and took precautions with phone discussions. Tears appeared in her eyes as she talked about William and Harry. "I must leave them something more than fairy tales," she said softly. "They need the truth," and remained motionless as the recording finished. She felt nausea from the shock. This reached far beyond anything she had expected. It involved a worldwide system connected directly to organizations supposed to serve the public. Diana had not suffered from unfounded fears. She had been correct, and the cost had been her life. She turned toward the bank employee waiting beyond the door. His face revealed nothing, but what he said next made her stop breathing. "You're not the first to ask about this box," he mentioned in a low voice. Someone else came by 2 weeks ago. They claimed to be family and gripped the key more tightly. The competition had started, and she was not the sole person possessing parts of the information. Princess, and came back to London filled with quiet resolve. What she learned in Switzerland had deeply affected her. Diana had not only gathered proof and worked to reveal wrongdoing, she had been pursued, and stored the materials safely inside a protected space at a personal property distant from any royal buildings. However, when her flight arrived at Heathrow, she did not realize that observers were already tracking her actions closely. The initial clue appeared in small ways. The mobile phone she used only for close relatives started producing odd noises and echoes while in use. Next, her postal deliveries arrived late, with some envelopes clearly opened and resealed. Her vehicle, always kept in excellent condition, refused to start one day inside her protected parking area. Technicians later found a cut-brake line explained away as chewing by animals. And recognized something more serious. She reached out to a longtime acquaintance retired from UK intelligence services to check her residence and electronic items thoroughly. He located signs of software designed to follow location on her phone, along with listening devices placed in her workroom. Individuals were paying attention. They understood she possessed Diana's materials and wanted to learn her next steps. During this period of growing concern, and received a parcel without any sender information. It contained just a single name, Timothy Ratcliffe, who had served as Diana's personal assistant years earlier, and recalled him as a reserved individual extremely dedicated who disappeared from view following Diana's passing. She located his current quiet house near Bath, and he consented to meet after dark inside a small church known to very few people. Under the faint glow of candles in the holy space, Timothy's features showed the strain of keeping quiet for many years. He spoke directly. "Your sister-in-law was not alone," he stated. "She relied on a small number of us who had no personal interest in preserving the system. We've stayed alert, hoping another person with courage would continue what she began," and listened without interrupting while Timothy explained everything plainly. The formal inquiry into Diana's death had contained numerous flaws. Important proof was disregarded. People with knowledge were quieted. Video recordings from cameras in Paris disappeared, and accounts of a white Fiat vehicle present at the site received no proper follow-up. It was never intended to reach a real conclusion, he explained, merely to fade away quietly. The burden of this knowledge weighed heavily on N. Diana had lost her life pursuing honesty, by taking on her cause, and had now placed herself in danger as well. Returning to her residence that night, she discovered one envelope pushed beneath her entrance. The writing was unknown to her, and the note inside was short. "Stop digging or join her." And looked at the sentence, her hand shaking just noticeably. The warning was unmistakable, yet the senders did not grasp that fear had never controlled her decisions. Having learned what Diana sacrificed everything to disclose, stepping away was impossible now. The memory of her sister-in-law no longer murmured quietly from the past. It called out forcefully, and then refused to allow that voice to be muted once more. The system revealed. Days blended into evenings while Princess and worked privately, examining Diana's collected proof the way an academic studies ancient writings. The papers brought from Switzerland, Diana's personal notes, and discreet statements from former contacts created an image impossible to dismiss. Diana had not fallen into risk unintentionally. She had exposed a global arrangement built upon advantages tied to royalty, disguised through charitable efforts and aid work, and organized sequences of events, connected individuals, and followed financial paths. The further she explored, the more obvious the pattern grew. Diana's worldwide initiatives, especially her efforts against landmines along with trips to conflict areas and camps for displaced people, had accidentally positioned her directly in the path of something much darker. Behind the arranged photographs and news stories, certain people exploited royal travel to divert attention while carrying out sales of weapons and cleaning illegal money across nations. The sense of personal betrayal struck hardest. Diana had placed trust in several of these individuals. She had shared meals and laughter with them at formal dinners, mentioned them positively during interviews, and stood up for them when criticized publicly. Yet some participated in the very structure that eventually targeted her. Within the money records appeared approvals signed by people close to palace operations, and compared banking details, charitable groups, and journey logs. One particular name kept appearing repeatedly, a person whose reputation had always seemed flawless, someone I never would have doubted, a blood relation. The realization made her feel ill, and reached out to Timothy Radcliffe again. Working together, they spoke with a former colleague of Diana's from the Red Cross who, after initial reluctance, verified Anne's worst suspicions. Diana had nearly completed preparations to release a detailed report alongside a reporter shortly before her death. That document would have named not only wealthy business figures, but also certain royals and companies working with government. The report never appeared. The reporter died weeks later, ruled an overdose. Another matter closed without deeper review. In the last group of materials, Anne located a folder marked Operation Marionette. It held messages exchanged between overseas agents and a private firm once contracted to watch and limit Diana's activities. The closing sheet contained a disturbing instruction: ensure containment before Paris trip. Risk elevated, and felt her throat tighten. She continued tracing connections until she found one decisive item, a low-quality but authentic monitoring photograph never released to the public. It captured the Paris tunnel right before the collision. The well-known white Fiat appeared, yet directly after it was another vehicle never identified or discussed, with registration leading to a business connected to someone on royal staff. Her hands shook. This was no longer theory. It was proof. The incident had not happened by chance. It had been arranged. Those responsible remained alive, held influence, enjoyed protection, and continued observing. And stood quietly in her workroom, one palm against the photograph. Diana had been pursued, and now the pursuit had resumed. The moment of deep emotion. Only the soft sounds from the fireplace broke the quiet in the workroom. Princess, and remained there by herself. Spread across tables and surfaces lay the extensive proof, pieces of a life she once failed to fully appreciate. A picture of Diana beaming with warmth and vitality, unaware of the threat against her, was attached next to groups of papers, and studied it, no longer from the viewpoint of a detached royal or someone who once doubted her. Now she recognized a person who had cried out for help without response. One tear traced down her face, catching her off guard, and rarely showed strong feelings openly. Her existence had centered on self-control, maintaining appropriate distance and firm composure. Yet on this night, everything changed. She covered her face with both hands and cried, gentle but steady weeping for the woman, married to her brother, whom she had wrongly assessed. For the younger individual who entered a dangerous world armed only with deep conviction and care for others, and recalled brushing off Diana's concerns as overreactions, seeing her passion as lack of maturity. But now each note, each recording, each quiet indication demonstrated that Diana had possessed greater awareness, greater bravery, and greater loneliness than anyone realized. I should have noticed, and said quietly to the empty room. I should have spoken to her. Regret pressed heavily on her. Diana had attempted to sound warnings, to share honest facts, yet the royal structure, news outlets, palace staff, and Anne herself had all looked elsewhere. Diana received labels like troublesome, mentally fragile, craving spotlight, when in reality she sought safety for her children. And went through one of Diana's closing messages another time. They will never stop until they own everything Diana had noted. Even William and Harry, they're not safe from the rot that grows behind these walls. I don't fear for myself anymore. I fear for what they'll become if no one tells them the truth. And held the sheet against her chest. More tears came, warm and releasing long-held feelings. Despite all the grand events, glittering crowns, formal obligations, and strict traditions, this essential reality had been ignored. A devoted parent facing danger alone, using herself as protection for her boys. Diana had never posed any risk. She had acted as their guardian. As Anne rose to steady herself, her secure phone vibrated. She answered the protected connection. "Ma'am," came Timothy Radcliffe's tense and hurried voice. "There's been movement." And stopped completely. Movement where? At Lamrook, Prince George's school. There was an attempt to infiltrate the grounds. Security stopped it, but it's not a coincidence. We believe the network is targeting the boys now, starting with William's children. You need to get to him now. The call ended abruptly, and looked at the silent device, her chest pounding. The threat had never truly vanished. It had merely shifted. Now those same hidden forces that ended Diana's life were approaching her children. This time, and refused to remain on the sidelines. She would stand and resist. A urgent struggle. Immediately after the conversation finished, Princess and began acting quickly, alerting protection teams through normal procedures risked involving people already compromised. She reached out solely to individuals she trusted without question, beginning with a former head of MI5 who still felt gratitude for a past discreet assistance provided by Diana. Very soon, a discreet guard unit headed toward Lamrock, where Prince George attended lessons. Another unobserved group started watching over Prince Harry's whereabouts in America. Everyone understood time was running short. She departed from Kensington while night still covered everything. Her path stayed concealed, and her messages were scrambled to prevent interception. Accompanying her were portable drives, the original papers, and copied recordings, all the items Diana had endangered herself to preserve. The goal was straightforward: make the entire operation public before another attack succeeded. Yet, and realized the people involved would not surrender easily. They had operated unseen for too long to accept exposure peacefully. As MI5 agents started connecting overseas finances to senior authorities, and took a step she never thought possible. She directly faced relatives. Inside a secluded area at Clarence House, she confronted two high-level royals whose names appeared in Diana's secret documents. Their faces stayed composed, practiced expressions of calm politeness. You knew what she was discovering, and stated firmly. And you let it happen. One shifted slightly in discomfort. These were complexities far beyond one woman's comprehension. No, and responded sharply, her tone more forceful than they had ever experienced from her. They were crimes, and now your silence is no longer enough to protect you. She set a thick folder onto the surface between them. If anything happens to William, to Harry, or to their children, this goes public. Every page, every name, every transaction. Heavy quiet filled the space afterward. Finally one spoke, voice lowered. You're making enemies you can't even see. I already have and answered, and I am still standing. At the same time, MI5 personnel noted unusual activity close to Prince William's secluded property. An unmarked delivery vehicle tried to pass outer guards. Authorities stopped it, and what they found inside caused alarm. Detailed building plans, recent monitoring pictures, and brake components altered for a car used by household employees. This was not theft. It served as a deliberate signal. From Sandringham, an observed real-time video as George left school property surrounded by heightened protection. Her fingers shook only a little. The group had emerged from concealment. They had acted openly. 1 hour later, a dark sport utility vehicle transporting Catherine, George, and Charlotte was pushed from a quiet rural lane. The person driving survived. The automobile suffered complete damage. Thankfully, no one sustained severe harm, yet the intent was obvious. This incident carried purpose. It warned of worse to come. Next time they would complete what they began years earlier. Anne's expression grew resolute while viewing rescue workers around the damaged car. Battle lines were drawn, and she had chosen to stand with Diana. Diana's ultimate success. The morning following the near attack, Princess, and positioned herself behind a speaker's stand inside a protected conference area, with global media watching attentively in quiet expectation. Secured by MI5 agents behind her rested closed folders, electronic records, and containers holding proof, everything obtained from Diana's carefully hidden collection. The facts were no longer concealed. They were moments from full release. And inhaled deeply, calm and firm. 4 years, we told the world a narrative that was incomplete. She started, speaking softly yet without wavering. What we failed to tell you, what was kept from all of us, was that Diana, Princess of Wales, died not simply as a symbol of compassion, but as a woman on a mission for justice. The statement rippled across the country and beyond. In coming days, front-page stories named individuals long considered beyond reach. Senior government figures, company leaders, and lesser royal members faced arrest or stepped down. Hidden accounts abroad were locked. Previously confidential inquiry records reopened. The complex structure Diana identified and revealed began collapsing. Central to everything stood a woman once ridiculed for showing too much feeling, for acting without caution. Yet now Diana received full validation. Her death held meaning. She sacrificed herself safeguarding honesty in her children. During the following weeks, and discreetly established the Diana Truth Foundation, focused on openness within worldwide charitable work, safeguarding those who report wrongdoing, and supporting thorough reporting. Its purpose remained clear: continue the effort Diana started privately. Her memory shifted from sorrow to accomplishment. One quiet evening in her personal workroom, and went back to the finely made jewelry container. Amid all the recent events, it had been placed carefully aside, recorded, maintained, yet not entirely cleared out. Her fingertips moved across the soft interior until locating another small indentation. A gentle click sounded, and one more section opened. Resting inside was a narrow audio cassette within an envelope marked for William and Harry, "Only if the world finally hears me," and paused, breathing halted briefly. She held it a moment longer before inserting it into an older playback device and starting it. Diana's voice entered the space, gentle yet strong. "My dear boys, if this message finds you, then I know you've heard the truth. Not just about what happened to me, but about who you truly are. Not symbols, not heirs, but hearts that can change this world. Don't carry fear, carry courage. That's what I tried to do. That's what I hope you'll keep doing for yourselves and for those who never had a voice." Moisture gathered in Anne's eyes. Diana's closing offering went beyond facts. It was pure affection, enduring, steady and triumphant. Princess Diana's ultimate purpose never centered on celebrity. It focused on guarding honesty and protecting her children from a heritage of quiet acceptance. Thanks to Princess Anne's persistent drive for fairness, those facts have now reached the public. What once lay hidden among precious items and secrecy has become part of historical accountability. Diana was far more than royalty. She served as someone exposing wrongdoing, a guardian, and a parent who refused to stop resisting. Hit subscribe for additional hidden accounts that bring to light what the past attempted to conceal. Give a like, and pass this on to maintain these important messages active. Each revealed fact moves us nearer to times when quiet acceptance no longer prevails. Continue following, because another major disclosure is already developing within royal residences.